Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I hope you had a nice 4th of July. While you're getting settled in, I'm going to ask my questions. If your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the recess, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? Okay, thank you very much. The state may call your next witness.
State would call Sabrina Fulton.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Judge, can we approach the bench?
Yes, you may. You may proceed.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record, please?
Sabrina Fulton.
And could you spell your first name and last name?
My first name is Sybrina. The last name is Fulton, Fulton.
Are you married, ma'am?
I'm divorced.
And do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us who they are and their names?
My youngest son is Trayvon Benjamin Martin. He's in heaven. And my oldest son is Javaris Lamar Fulton.
Do you live in Miami, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
And have you lived in Miami your entire life?
Yes, I have.
And who do you live in Miami with?
My son Javaris Fulton and my brother Ronald Fulton.
Okay. Was Trayvon Benjamin Martin your son?
Yes, he was.
And was his date of birth February the 5th of 1995?
Yes, it is.
Are you working at this time, ma'am?
I am employed. I'm on leave right now.
Okay. Where are you currently employed, or who are you currently employed with where you're on leave?
I actually work for Miami-Dade County Public Housing and Community Development.
Okay. How long have you been working there, ma'am?
I've been with the county for 24 years. I've been with the housing agency for about 10 years.
And prior to going to the housing agency, what did you do?
I did code enforcement for 11 years.
And can you briefly tell us about your education background, ma'am?
I have a bachelor's degree with a minor in communications from Grambling State University, was half of my courses, and I graduated from Florida Memorial University in Miami.
What was your major? I'm sorry.
My major was English with a minor in communications.
Okay. Was Trayvon Martin right or left-handed?
Trayvon was right-handed.
Trayvon Martin had 2 tattoos on his bodies. Do you know where they were on his body?
He had praying hands on his right upper shoulder with his grandmother's and great-grandmother's name. That's the first tattoo. They were praying hands, and they had pearls going through them.
Okay. And do you know where the other tattoo was?
The other tattoo was on his left wrist. He had my name there.
Okay. Prior to your son's death, had you heard him crying or yelling prior to his death? Had you ever heard him while he was growing up and while you were raising him? Had you ever heard him crying or yelling?
Yes.
Okay. I want to play a recording for you, ma'am.
911, do you need police, fire, medical? Maybe both, I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay, what's the address that they're near?
1211 Twin Trees Lane.
Twin Trees Lane? Is this in the Twin Lake Homes in Sanford?
Yes.
Okay, and is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
And you don't know why?
I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick, please.
Okay. Does he look hurt to you?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your number?
There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
Ma'am, that screaming or yelling, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And who do you recognize that to be, ma'am?
Trayvon Benjamin Martin.
Your Honor, subject to the issue we discussed, she's going to be recalled. I have no further questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to hold off on your cross until we finish the direct?
I can talk to her now, and then if there's need afterwards, I'll continue that.
Okay.
Truly apologize for your loss.
Objection, improper, no, not a question.
Okay,
Well, I'm
you need to
sorry.
make a question.
Excuse me?
You need to ask a question.
Will you tell us the first time that you listened to that tape, when you listened to it? Where were you?
I was here in Sanford. I believe it was the mayor's office.
And that was pursuant to a request made by your lawyers to have that tape released, correct?
That's correct.
And my understanding is that that happened actually in the mayor's office, correct?
Yes.
And there were no law enforcement officers present?
They were there, but they wasn't actually in the room.
They were actually not allowed in the room, correct?
I don't know about that.
Were you present there when Chief Lee was talking to the mayor and to City Manager Bonaparte about the concern with having the tape released?
Objection is to hearsay.
I asked whether or not she was there.
And your objection?
Question.
My objection is to hearsay what somebody else said in her presence.
It will be sustained as to hearsay. Rephrase your question.
Were you there during the time that Chief of Police Lee, was having a conversation with the mayor and City Manager Bonaparte?
No.
When the tape was played for you, who played it for you?
I'm not absolutely sure. I'm just trying to remember back. I think it was the mayor.
It was not any law enforcement officer, correct?
It was not.
And who was in the room when that tape was played?
Trayvon's dad, Tracy Martin, Javaris Fulton, Stephanie Sands, Darian Sands, Benjamin Crump, attorney Natalie Jackson, I believe Mayor Triplett was there, and that there may have been one other person. Not absolutely sure, but I think Bonaparte was there.
When you say Bonaparte, that's Sanford City Manager Bonaparte.
Yes.
Was the tape, the first time that you heard that tape, was it played at one time for everybody who was in the room?
Yes.
Did any one of those witnesses listen to the tape individually? Or was it all at one time?
I don't know if they listened individually, but that was my first time hearing it.
Well, had anybody indicated to you in that group that they had listened to the tape before?
No.
Did Tracy Martin tell you he listened to the tape before?
No.
Had you had any conversations with him about listening to the tape before that event?
No.
Imagine that it was probably one of the worst things that you went through to listen to that tape, correct?
Absolutely.
And that if it was your son, in fact, screaming, as you testified, that would suggest that it was Mr. Zimmerman's fault that led to his death, correct?
Correct.
And if it was not your son screaming, if it was, in fact, George Zimmerman, then you would have to accept the probability that it was Trayvon Martin who caused his own death, correct?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. If you were to listen to that tape and not hear your son's voice, that would mean that it would have been George Zimmerman's voice, correct?
And not hear my son screaming?
Correct.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, ma'am.
I heard my son screaming.
I understand. The alternative, the only alternative, would you agree, would be that if it was not your son screaming, that it would be George Zimmerman, correct?
Objection is to speculation.
Sustained.
You certainly had to hope that that was your son screaming even before you heard it, correct?
I didn't hope for anything. I just simply listened to the tape.
Mm-hmm. And in your mind, as his mother, there was no doubt whatsoever that it was him screaming, correct?
Absolutely.
Did you have any thought in mind how you would react if you believed or didn't hear your son's voice?
I really didn't know what the tape was all about.
And everybody else in the room, when they listened to the tape, who was the first one to react?
I was.
And everybody else then reacted similarly to you, correct?
Well, they also heard the tape themselves.
Correct. And every one of them then told you that they agree with your opinion that it was Trayvon Martin's voice, correct?
They didn't tell me anything.
When you mentioned a moment ago that you didn't know what, nobody spoke to you to tell you that you would soon be listening to screams from the event that led to your son's death?
No.
Mayor Triplett never said anything like that to you?
No.
Nor did any of your other family members?
They hadn't heard the tape at that time.
But the question is whether or not anyone told you to prepare yourself for the event for the trauma of having to listen to somebody scream moments before your son was shot?
No,
Nobody mentioned that to you?
no,
Tracy Martin never told you about that?
no.
And you just need to listen to it one time, correct?
That's it.
One moment, Charlie. Thank you, Your Honor. And then obviously, based upon potential recall.
Yes. Any redirect?
You were asked about hope. Did you hope your son wouldn't be dead, Trayvon Martin?
Yeah.
You were asked by defense counsel about hope. Are you still hoping that he would still be alive?
I hope he was still alive.
And I don't know how else to ask this, but I'm going to ask it. Did you enjoy listening to that recording?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. That's another question.
Okay, Ms. Fulton? Yes.
Because another issue is, ma'am, and the risk of another objection, I don't mean to put you through this any more necessary than we need to, but you certainly would hope that your son Trayvon Martin did nothing that could have led to his own death, correct?
What was your question again?
You certainly hope, as a mom, you certainly hope that your son Trayvon Martin would not have done anything that would have led to his own death, correct?
What I hope for is that this wouldn't have never happened and he would still be here.
Absolutely.
That's my hope.
Absolutely. And now dealing with the reality that he's no longer here, it is certainly your hope as a mom, hold out hope as long as you can, that Trayvon Martin was in no way responsible for his own death, correct?
I don't believe he was.
I know. And that's the hope that you continue, correct?
I don't understand what you're trying to ask me.
And again, I don't mean to put you through more than we need to. No other questions, Sean.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fulton, you may step down.
Doris Fulton, please.
Raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir. If you'd please tell the members of the jury your name.
Javaris Fulton,
Mr. Fulton, how old are you?
22,
In what city do you currently live?
Miami,
Can I ask you to scoot up just a little bit so we can get you into that microphone? How long have you lived in the Miami area?
all my life.
Are you in school?
Yes.
Where is it that you attend school?
Florida International University,
And what year will you be at FIU this coming fall?
this will be my senior year.
Do you have a major?
Yes.
And what is that?
Information technology.
And are you a full-time student?
Yes.
Are you related to Trayvon Martin?
Yes.
How so?
That's my brother.
And are you older or younger than Trayvon Martin?
Older,
How much older?
about 4.5 years.
What is your mother's name?
Sabrina Fulton.
And what is your, are you related to Tracy Martin?
Yes.
How are you related to Tracy Martin?
That's my dad.
Is he your biological father?
No.
Why do you call him your dad?
Well, he's the only dad I know. I grew up with him.
Did you and Trayvon Martin grow up together?
Yes.
And how would you describe your relationship with Trayvon Martin growing up? Were y'all close or what?
Yes, we were very close.
Despite the 4 years age difference, did the two of you, you and Trayvon Martin, do things together when you were growing up?
Yes.
Let me turn your attention to the month of February 2012. Were you and Trayvon Martin living together at that time?
Yes.
And who did you live with?
My mom, Sabrina Fulton, my brother, and my uncle.
Let me turn your attention to Sunday, February 26th. Were you aware that Trayvon Martin was with his father, Tracy Martin, in Sanford, Florida that day?
Yes.
Did you go to Sanford that weekend?
No.
At some point, were you notified that Trayvon had been killed in Sanford?
Yes.
And when were you told?
Monday.
And who told you?
My mother.
Since your brother's death, have you had an opportunity to hear a tape that contains screaming and a gunshot?
Yes.
Can you estimate for the members of the jury approximately how many times you've heard that tape?
Anywhere between 10 to 15 times.
And how have you heard it? Have you heard it on a computer, on TV, on the internet, or what?
I've heard it from the computer and from TV.
And do you recognize any voices on that tape?
Yes.
Whose voice do you recognize?
My brother.
Trayvon's?
Yes.
What parts of the recording do you recognize as your brother's voice?
The yelling and the screaming.
Had you ever heard Trayvon Martin yell or scream as the two of you were growing up?
I've heard him yell, but not like that, but yes.
Your Honor, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus.
You actually were not as certain that it was your brother's voice when you first heard it, though, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, you had talked to a reporter about whose voice it may have been, correct?
Yes.
And you told that reporter, Gio Benitez, on March 31st of 2012, that you weren't sure, correct?
Yes.
You said that, honestly, really haven't listened to it. I've heard it. I would think it was my brother, but I'm not completely positive. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to answer out now.
Yes.
So having listened to the tape, the first time you listened to it was in the mayor's office in Sanford, correct?
Yes.
And your mom was there, correct?
Yes.
And other family members, and at least 2 attorneys, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And during that time, you listened to it along with everybody else, correct?
Yes.
And from having listened to it, it was your thought that it might be Trayvon, correct?
When we heard it in the mayor's office, how do I explain it? I guess I didn't want to believe that it was him. So that's why during that interview, I said I wasn't sure. I guess it was, listening to it was clouded by shock and denial and sadness. I didn't really want to believe that it was him.
Sure. But you recall the date or thereabouts when you listened to that? Middle of March, March 16th of 2012, would that be about right?
I don't remember.
Let me ask it this way. It was a full 2 weeks before you had your sit-down interview with the reporter, Benitez, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. If I were to, I mentioned a moment ago that the interview was on CBS Miami Channel 4 on March 31st. Do you have any reason to contest that?
No, I'm not sure of the dates.
Okay. And I mentioned also that the tape, and we'll find this out from other witnesses, that the tape was played for the family on March 16th or thereabouts. So would you have any reason to contest that?
No.
So if that was about 2 weeks, did you listen to the tape in between?
Probably not.
In the 2 weeks?
guessing no.
I'm sorry?
I'm guessing no.
Well, the reporter actually played the tape, didn't he? When you were there?
I'm not sure. Actually, could you? I'm not sure of the time you're talking about anymore.
Okay. Let me ask it this way then. Do you recall sitting down with Gio Benitez, a reporter for CBS Miami Channel 4, and talking to him about who you thought may or may not have been on the tape?
Yes,
Do you remember that event?
I remember.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I remember.
And that was the event I talked about earlier, where your first answer to him, his question was, who did you hear crying for help? Remember that question? No?
I don't remember the question.
Okay. Then what I'd like to do, with the court's indulgence, is to play that recording for you and ask if you remember the call at that point, or the TV program at that point.
Judge, I object to that as being improper impeachment.
We would need to do that first outside the presence of the jury for
I
that
understand.
purpose. So ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please put your notepads face down, follow Deputy Jarvis back into the jury room. Please be seated.
And just so we are clear, Your Honor, I know that you have previously suggested that it needs to be played outside the jury. I think that he has now denied the question and answer, and I think it's proper impeachment to play his own words for
I
the
think
jury.
he said he wasn't sure, and if the rules of impeachment require that you show the witness the statement or let them listen to the statement, and that's done to themselves, and since it's going to be played in open court, the jury needed to be removed. So you can play it for him, and we go from there.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Judge, just for the record, I believe the witness's answer was that he told the reporter that he wasn't positive it was his brother's voice. So I think this is not going to be proper impeachment because I think it's consistent with what he said in court.
Let him listen to it.
Doris Fulton.
Obviously, you heard those calls.
It has video. I don't know that it's necessary for the witness to see the video. So rather than go through warming up the
Just go ahead and
projector.
play it, yeah.
Obviously, you heard those calls, and I know because you mentioned the cries for help. When you heard those calls and those cries for help, who did you hear crying for help?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't really haven't even listened to them that good. So, like, I've heard it, but my brother, but I'm not completely positive that.
For these purposes, does that assist you in remembering the conversation you had with Gio Benitez?
Yes.
That was, of course, your voice, correct?
Yes.
And you did say to him the words, "I'm not sure."
Yes.
So at that, I think that is for the purpose of impeachment, but I am going to renew my request that based upon his equivocation concerning his answers to Mr.
Well, I need to hear his answer to the original question because the state is saying that he answered similarly. So if the court reporter could take a moment to read it back.
And as she's doing that, I think when I said to him his words, he said yes. But then when I asked him again later, so I think the later question is the more relevant one, he said, I really don't remember. And it was for that reason that I broke and wanted to remind him. So yes, the first question he did, but then he equivocated towards the end of his testimony.
Judge, I think his answer, if I don't know, was, do you remember the reporter asking you the question, that particular question? But he did not equivocate about what his answer was. He said his answer was he wasn't sure at the time, which is what he said here today.
Thank you. If y'all will just not say anything so the court reporter can look back.
Second, what question you're referring to? I'll just read this question. Good morning, sir.
Not to interrupt you, I think it was literally that question. It was the first question I asked.
Okay. Question. You actually were not as certain that it was your brother's voice when you first heard it, though, correct? Answer, correct. Question, as a matter of fact, you had talked to a reporter about whose voice it may have been, correct? Answer, yes. Want me to keep going?
Yes, I want.
Question, and you told that reporter, Gio Benitez, on March 3rd, 2012, that you weren't sure, correct? Answer, yes. Question, you said that honestly, well, you haven't listened to it. I've heard it. I would think it was my brother, but I'm not completely positive, correct? Answer, uh-huh. Question, you have to answer out loud. Answer, yes.
This would be impeachment of a collateral matter as to whether or not the question was asked, but his answer is the same.
I would ask that the court reporter, my concern was that he equivocated when I asked him just at the end of the examination before he took a break. So maybe if we can have the last 3 or 4 questions, just so it's in context.
Okay, I'm not so quite sure what question you want. I'll just read this. Okay, let me ask it this way. When do you recall sitting down with Giovanni Benitez, a reporter for CBS Miami Channel 4, and talking to him about who you thought may or may not have been on the tape? Answer, yes. Question, do you remember that event? Answer, I remember it. Question, I'm sorry? Answer, yes, I remember it. Question, that was the event I talked about earlier where your first answer to him, his question was, who did you hear crying for help? Do you remember that question? Answer, I don't remember the question. And then you wanted to play the tape.
So whether he remembered the question is a collateral matter, his answer was the same, that he told the reporter that he wasn't sure, whatever words were used. So that's not necessarily, that's not impeachment, it's a collateral matter of what the reporter may have asked. His answer did not differ.
And I would renew my request that it be played in front of the jury for a couple of reasons. One, his equivocation just now, and two, that the best evidence actually is his own words that he spoke to the reporter. It shows his inflection, it shows his hesitation, and rather than having just the colloquy between...
What is the purpose? Is it for impeachment? Because the court's finding it's not impeachment. Is there another legal basis for playing that recording?
It's the best evidence of the event that happened back then, Your Honor, and even if he testified to it now, he's testifying, quite honestly, in a very different attitude and inquiry
That's
than it showed.
not a legal basis.
Understand the court's concern.
Okay, so for impeachment purposes, no, it may not be played because his answer is the same today as it was then, so that's not impeachment. His not remembering the reporter's question is a collateral matter because it's not the question that matters, it's the answer that's given. So your request is, the objection is sustained.
For record purposes, I would like to have this clip, which we just played to him, marked as an exhibit.
Of course, it would come in as, is it double J? Not come in, but it'll be marked as double J. Okay, I hear the locksmiths are here and the jury's already out, so let's take a brief recess. We ready to bring the jury back in? Let's have Mr. Fulton come back onto the stand. Grace, did you take that? We are. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the extended break, but we were having some technical difficulties in the courtroom that have now been resolved. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, good morning, sir. Good morning. When we took a break, I was asking you your memory of the question that Mr. Benitez asked you, and I think what you said was you didn't remember the question specifically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But leading up to that, we had talked about the fact that you had listened to the tape in the mayor's office in Sanford sometime a couple of weeks before. Would you agree?
Yes.
And that was with all the other family members?
Yes.
And the civil attorneys representing the family, Ben Crump and Natalie Jackson, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You actually listened to it more than once that day. You listened to it at least twice, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was even played for other family members more often than twice, right?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. You don't recall whether or not you had listened to it between the first two times you heard it in the mayor's office and your conversation with Mr. Benitez?
I don't remember, yeah. I don't remember.
It was, of course, available to you, correct?
What do you mean by available?
Well, at that point, the city of Sanford made the decision to release the calls to the general public, right?
I don't remember, but I never had the tapes myself.
Okay. Did there ever come a time in between the first two times that you heard it and your conversation with Mr. Benitez that you wanted to listen to it again but couldn't?
Say it again.
Okay. In the 2-week period between the first two times you listened to it and the time you talked to Mr. Benitez about that, during that period of time, Did you ever ask someone to listen to it again and be denied?
No.
So in your mind, listening to it the first 2 times was what you needed to hear, correct?
Not what I needed, but I didn't want to listen to them again.
Okay. And yet, your answers earlier remain the same, of course. You said what you said to Mr. Benitez about not being sure who it was on the tape, correct?
Yes.
And though you said a moment ago that you didn't want to listen to it more, you actually have listened to it many more times since, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a reason why in between the first 2 weeks you didn't want to listen to it, but were okay with listening to it 10 or 15 times afterwards?
Yeah. It's emotional. I didn't want to listen to them again.
But you have listened to it at least 10 times since, correct?
Yeah. Well, no, in total 10 times.
Okay.
So if that was 2, maybe 8 separate occasions.
Now you said a moment ago that you lived in the house with Sabrina Fulton and Trayvon Martin, correct?
Yes.
Tracy was not living there at that point, though, correct?
No.
So when you say that you consider Tracy Martin to be your dad, he actually left the home a long, long time ago, correct?
Yes.
How old were you when he actually left the home?
I'm guessing 9 or 10.
And that would have put Trayvon at approximately what age, Trayvon Martin?
If I was 9, he might have been 5.
You, the two of you didn't really hang out together, did you? You and Trayvon Martin?
Yes. But, I mean, it depends what you're talking about.
Okay. You didn't have the same friends, correct?
No.
So that if you were to go out somewhere, you might go out and do something with your set of friends, and he would go out and do something with his set of friends.
Correct.
Certainly as brothers, I think you said you would do things together, whatever that might be, correct? But you didn't run in the same circles, did you?
No.
You didn't interact with him on Facebook?
Not really, no.
Nor on Twitter?
No.
But you did interact, of course, with your other friends and on those social media sites, correct?
Occasionally, yes.
I'm going to have a moment, Your Honor. And when Tracy Martin left the home, he actually got remarried, didn't he?
Yes, some years later, yes.
And was Trayvon Martin then spending a lot of time? The new wife was Alicia, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you spend a lot of time with your dad over at that house?
Yes.
Okay. And did Trayvon Martin as well spend a lot of time over at that house?
Yes.
He was more living there a lot of the time in the last few years, wasn't he?
Not really.
What do you mean by that?
He how it went. Let me see, I guess growing up, we usually spent the weekends over there, or whenever we wanted, I guess, we could go over. And towards the end, I don't know, it was about the same.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Let me redirect.
Thank you. We're asked about listening to that 911 call with your brother's screams on it for the first time at the mayor's office. Was that emotionally difficult for you to hear?
Yes.
Were you still sort of in denial about your brother's death at that point?
Yes.
And then you don't recall listening to that tape again between the time you heard it at the mayor's office and the interview that you were asked about. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
All right. But you did tell the interviewer that you would like to think it's your brother's voice, but you weren't completely positive. Is that what you told him?
Yes.
And then,
Jack, you want to, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
and then since that time of the interview, you had an opportunity, you said 8, possibly more times to listen to it.
Yes.
Do you now believe it's Trayvon Martin's voice yelling for help on the tape?
Yes.
You were asked about growing up. How old were you approximately when your mother, Sabrina Fulton, and Tracy Martin divorced?
About 9.
And as I understood what you said, after that point, you primarily lived with your mother, but you would visit Tracy Martin on the weekends?
Yes.
And any other time you wanted to?
Yes.
And would Trayvon go with you to Tracy Martin's house to visit?
Yes.
You now go to FIU, correct?
Yes.
Where did you go before that? Did you go to a different college?
Yes. I went to FAMU.
And where was that located?
Tallahassee.
All right. When you were at FAMU in Tallahassee, would you come home and stay with your mother and Trayvon Martin?
Yes.
Were there occasions that Trayvon Martin, your brother, went to visit you in Tallahassee when you were in school there?
Yes.
Okay, but back in, I guess, the fall of 11 and the first months of 2012, you were actually at FIU back in Miami.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. May Mr. Fulton be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir. You may be excused. State, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, I did approach this briefly on
Yes, and Ms. Fulton, you're still under oath, so we don't need to swear you in again. Please approach. Please be seated. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may proceed. Yes, you may.
Ms. Fulton, I'm going to show you part of State's Exhibit 149. And do you recognize this button here?
Yes.
And is this a button that your son always wore, Mr. Trayvon Martin always wore?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any cross?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. May Ms. Fulton be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll give you a minute to get your file. We're asked about, you can state your name for the record, please, sir.
Good morning. My name Shiping Bao. Shipingbao.
What is your occupation, sir?
I'm the Associate Medical Examiner in Volusia and Seminole counties.
And if you could just briefly tell us about your specialty, what area of practice you have, and your education background and training.
I received my medical degree in China, came to United States in 1992 when I was 29 years old to pursue American dream. I did my pathology training in Birmingham, Alabama, and finished my forensic pathology fellowship in Fort Worth, Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office. After that, I was Deputy Medical Examiner in Tarrant County, Texas for 2 years before came to Florida. I am certified by American Board of Pathology in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology. I have medical licenses in the states of Florida and Texas. I am the fellow member of the National Association of Medical Examiners.
Okay. Dr. Bao, if we could, please explain to the jury when we talk about forensic pathology what that means.
As a medical examiner in forensic pathology, I review medical records and reports from our investigators and police department and do autopsies to determine the cause and the manner of death. Also, I serve as the fact witness and expert witness in the court, such as today.
Okay. And how long have you been with your current position at the medical examiner's office in, I guess, the 7th Circuit? Is it Volusia and Seminole counties?
Yes. Our office covers both Volusia County and Seminole counties.
Okay. Can you briefly explain to the jury what an autopsy is?
Autopsy means to see for self. It is the postmortem examination of human body to determine the cause and the manner of death.
Okay.
The cause of death is either an injury or disease. Injuries such as gunshot wound to the head, stab wound to the chest, or blunt force trauma due to motor vehicle accident. Disease such as heart disease, cancer, or stroke. The manner of death is classified into five categories. Homicide, one person killed by another, such as in this case, Trevor Martin was killed by another person. Suicide, one killed him or herself. Accident, such as motor vehicle accident, drowning. Natural, such as heart disease or stroke. If we do not have enough evidence to determine the manner of death, we call undetermined. Autopsy includes the identification of human body, external and internal examinations to record the disease, injury, and other evidence, plus toxicology test.
Dr. Bao, if we could, approximately how many autopsies have you performed in your career, sir?
So far, I have done more than 3,000 autopsies, in which about 150 to 200 homicides.
Okay.
I did about 20 court testimonies or depositions. In the last 5 years, I have done about 300 to 700 cases a year.
And you, as you stated, you previously testified in Florida as an expert, is that correct?
Yes,
Well,
both
this time I tended to
Texas
witness.
and Florida.
This time I tended to witness an expert in forensic pathology.
You may so testify.
I don't have any void here.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ballard, we can move into what you did in this particular case, that you perform an autopsy on a person later identified to you as Trayvon Martin under your medical examiner number 12-24-043.
Yes.
And where was the autopsy performed, Dr. Ballard?
Where? Or
Yes,
when?
sir.
Yeah, we did autopsy on February 27th, 2012. I started autopsy at 10:30 p.m. After autopsy, I typed autopsy report, start from 4:06 p.m. I finished my autopsy report at 5:10 p.m. same day.
And was that done at the medical examiner's office in Volusia County?
Yes, in Daytona Beach.
Did you determine the cause of death, sir?
Yes.
And what was the cause of death?
The cause of death is gunshot wound of chest.
And what was the manner of death, sir?
The manner of death is homicide, meaning he was killed by another person.
If you could, tell us what Trayvon Martin's height and weight was, sir. What was his height?
I would like to present the jury how I did autopsy from
Okay,
the
yeah,
morning.
please.
Trayvon Martin came to my office as unidentified human body. He was not identified at the time. All we know, he was a black boy. He was shot. He's dead. There is no name, no age. The first in the morning, we did an X-ray, tried to locate the bullets or fragments of bullet. We found out he had some fragments at the lower chest. His body was sealed in a plastic bag with number 0000517. After we look at X-ray, so we opened the bag. We saw a black boy, 71 inches long, 158 pounds. He had a defect, a hole on the anterior sweatshirt with blood. Under the sweatshirt, there was another t-shirt. Again, there was blood, a defect, and a soot, S-O-O-T, soot. After we removed the clothes, we saw a defect on his left lower chest, 3/8 inch diameter, round, with soot, S-O-O-T, with ring abrasion around wound with stippling, also called powder tattooing. After we removed the skin, there was defect between left anterior number 5 and the number 6 ribs. So the bullet went through directly from anterior to posterior through anterior pericardial sac, which is the fiber tissue around the heart, through right ventricle of the heart, anterior right ventricle of the heart, through posterior right ventricle of the heart, through posterior pericardial sac. At that point, the bullet separated. The lead core of the bullet was recovered in the pericardial sac behind right ventricle. The two fragments of the jacket went right through his right lower lobe of the lung. We have 3 lobes on the right, 2 lobes on the right. The bullet went through the right lower lobe of the lung. The 2 fragments was recovered in the right pleural cavity. At that time, at that point, Trevor Martin, I believe, was still alive. His heart was still beating. Every time his heart was beating, some of the blood will go from right ventricle to the pulmonary artery to the lung and supply his brain. I believe, it is my opinion, that he was still alive, he was still in pain, he was still in suffering.
Objection, Your Honor. That's not a relevant issue at this time.
It's
It's
relevant.
simply the emotional
Okay, just a
appeal.
second, I'm sorry, your objection is relevant? Okay,
Inspector.
overruled.
He's in suffering, he's in pain.
Well, then I would object to speculation then.
No, it's
And
my
it's not-
opinion.
Wait, wait.
And
When
it's
there's
not,
an objection, I have to rule on it. Okay, so please, just wait. If counsel, please approach.
sure.
So if you'll just wait a moment.